Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So, in this video, we'll tackle about the Module 6, which is conducting surveys, observations, and experiments. You have explored the nature and purpose of designing a questionnaire, and now you're ready to explore methods of data collection. There are varieties of methods in data collection, including observations, experiments, surveys, and many others. But the most common used methods is experiments, observations, and surveys. The purpose of this lesson is for you to know the methods of data collection, how they work in practice, the purpose of each, their work use in appropriate, and how they help your research. At the end of this lesson, you are expected to conduct surveys, experiments, or observations. So today, you are going to learn the three different ways on how to conduct surveys, experiments, or observations. So let's start with the first method. The first method is survey. A survey measures characteristics of interest about a population using selected sample without making connections between the data. So in doing a survey, the researcher must understand the right mode of inquiry for establishing an inference number, whether a large number of people or from a small number of people in a group. The very aim of conducting a survey is to present and explain the actual experiences of a certain population. In conducting survey can be done in three steps. First, by email, second, by telephone, and third, by personal interview. The method of data collection can be from observation to content analysis, and this can be used by survey. The challenges limitations of a survey are seen according to the following criteria. First, appropriateness of the method. Second, accuracy of what to observe. Third, generalizability of findings. Fourth, administrative constraints. Fifth, ethical and political difficulties. An example of a survey is the open-ended questions. This is placed in a box form and will permit your respondents to provide a unique answer.
So the positive side of this method is that very time efficient. It's very quick to just come up with a question, ask someone a question and get their answer, then record it. This is also nice because you get the right to the point in your question. You're designing a question to get the exact information you're looking for, so it focuses on the desired response. And the reason you could get a biased response is because when you ask someone a question, the wording is very important. The wording of the question or the way someone interprets your questions can cause you to have biased responses. So you have to careful with how you will ask and formulate your questions. So for example, if you ask someone, do you like the rock music? You might be biased towards say yes or no depending on how they feel about rock music, whereas maybe if you had them rank different kinds of music and give them different options, that would give you a better idea on how they feel about this type of music.
So, the second method is observation. According to Wenceslao Dacanay Manalo and San Gabriel, observation may take place in natural setting and involve the researcher taking lengthy and descriptive notes of what is happening. So, the observation, as the name implies, is a way of collecting data through observing. This data collection method is classified as a participatory study because the researcher has immersed herself in the settings where her respondents are while taking notes or recording. Observation data collection method may involve watching, listening, touching, and reading behavior and characteristics of phenomena.
Writing descriptions. Researcher might miss out on observation as they are taking notes. The researcher may be focused on a particular event or situation. There is room for subjective interpretation of what is happening. Next is video recording. People acting unnaturally towards the camera or others avoiding the camera. The camera may not always see everything. Photographs and artifacts. Useful when is a need to collect observable information or phenomena such as buildings, neighborhood dress and appearance. Artifacts include objects of significance, memorabilia, instruments, tools, and others. Documentation. Any and all kinds of documentation may be used to provide information. A local paper, information on a notice board, administrative policies and procedures.
So, we talk all about the positive and negative aspects of this method and what observation about rock music. So, first is positive. The positive side, in this situation, you can acquire more details and it's different from just saying, do you like rock music? And getting a yes or no answer. So, positive aspects of this method is that it allows you to gather more detailed information compared to simply asking a yes or no question. By observing someone respond to this rock music, you can gather specific data. This can provide valuable insight into their preferences and emotions. So the next is negative. The negative side of this method is that it is time consuming and it can be difficult to observe somebody for a longer of time. So, however, there are negative aspects of consider. This method can be time-consuming as it observing someone for a longer period of time. Rock music is not hard to play, but it depending on the scope of all your study, you may need to spend even more time observing individuals to gather the necessary information. Moreover, it's important to note that this method lacks a control group because a control would involve giving different types of music to different individuals and observing their responses without a control group. It can be challenging to draw definitive conclusion between different groups of people.
So the third method is experiment. According to Murdoch 2020, in this method, you will randomly select people and you need to split them into groups and they will now your control group. So for example, if you're doing an experiment about medication and you wanted to see if a medication was helping somebody, you would have your participants in two different groups and you would get different treatments. One group would get the medication you're interested in finding out if it works, and then other group would maybe get different medication that they are going to take but they don't know that it actually doesn't do anything. So that will tell us if there's any bias in the experiment towards somebody thinking they'd feel better just because they're taking medication. So that's one example of how control group would work. So the positive of this is control group reduces bias and it also allows us to determine if there's a cause and effect happening. Especially in example of medication, we can really determine if this medication helping people or not. So the cons is time consuming or may not be ethical. So the concern is you have to make sure you're being ethical. You're not like persuading them or you're not treating them in a way that's not okay. So that's a concern you have to make sure with an experiment.
In this situation with the rock music, where control group will be having a group that listens to a different genre of music, so that we will be observe one group listening to rock and one group listening to something else will actually compare. So the positive side of this is the control group reduce bias for us in the survey and observational study. We didn't have a control group. It also allows you to determine if there are cause and effect happen. The negative side of this method is the time consuming and it can be difficult to observe somebody for a longer period of time. So the rock music, it is not that hard to just play rock music and say how someone reacts.